Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I will call this Bloomington City Council meeting to order. Tonight is Monday, February 24th, 2025. Thank you for everyone joining us this evening. We will start our meeting as we always do. If you are able, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, thanks to everybody here in the chambers and thanks to everybody watching online and on cable access tonight. Appreciate your joining us tonight. Also want to welcome back Councilmember Rivas, who back with us after an extended time off for some health issues, but we're very glad to have you back. Thanks for coming back. We're very glad to see you, Victor. Thanks for being here. Good. Council, our first order of business tonight will be to approve tonight's agenda. And the agenda, we have three introductory items under item 2.2. We have the introduction of new employees. We'll be hearing from a couple of different folks, welcoming them to our city staff. We're going to hear two work plans and annual reports. Item 2.2 is the work plan and annual report for the Bloomington Human Rights Commission. And 2.3 is the 2025 Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission work plan. Under item 3, our consent business. Councilmember Lohman has our consent agenda tonight, 12 items on the consent business. Under item 4, our hearings, resolutions, and ordinances, we actually have 3 public hearings this evening. Item 4.1 will be a public hearing regarding the Heights Tax Increment Financing District. Item 4.2, a public hearing on our City Code Amendment for RS1 and R1A District Ordinance. And item 4.3 is a public hearing regarding the vacation of public drainage and utility easements related to the HYUNDAI addition. And item 5, our organizational business, item 5.1, we'll get an update on the Community Health and Wellness Center from our Park and Recreation Director, Ann Catry, and I think a cast of thousands will be chipping in on that as well, so looking forward to hearing that. And we will wrap up our meeting as we always do. Item 5.2 will be our City Council policy and issue update. Council, any corrections, additions, or anything to comment on with tonight's agenda as presented? Hearing none, I would move approval of the agenda as presented. Motion and a second by Councilmember D'Alessandro to accept tonight's agenda as presented. No further council discussion on this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. With the agenda in hand, we will move through it now. Item 2, our introductory items. Item 2.1 is the introduction of new employees. We've got a couple of folks coming up. Why don't we start with our parks folks. Allison Warren, if you could come forward and introduce our newest employee in parks. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having us here tonight. I am here to introduce Jessica Larson, and she is our newest Parks and Recreation Coordinator, and she is going to be overseeing our senior and adaptive programming and also continuing to add new programming for active older adults and expand those offerings. And I'll let Jessica tell a little bit more about herself here tonight.
Yeah. Hello, good evening, Mayor and council members. Like Allison said, I'm Jessica Larson, and I'm excited to be in the Parks and Rec department. And a little about me, I have my master's degree in recreational therapy from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, and I've had a variety of roles within recreation and social services over the last 15 years. I currently live over in Como neighborhood of St. Paul, and I'm getting married in September. And I've been here for about a month, and it's going great so far. I'm thoroughly enjoying working with the team and getting to know the community members that have been a part of our programs. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here tonight and welcome aboard. We're very glad to have you. And you got a big, important job with the recreation as it relates to Creekside now, but the upcoming Community Health and Wellness Center as well.
Absolutely.
Good.
Lots of exciting things coming.
Very good. Very good. Thanks much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Amy Cheney. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight it is my pleasure to introduce Lauren Reynolds. Lauren joined the city on February 10th as our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. She will lead the work of equity, inclusion, and belonging, which includes developing and ensuring the success of key strategies related to having an equitable and inclusive organization. Lauren and her team, who are here tonight, we've got Asela and Arian, are focused on key initiatives identified in the Bloomington Tomorrow Together strategic plan that was developed with community, council, and staff. While contributing to a number of initiatives, the team will be closely involved with continuing to build a connected and welcoming community. Lauren most recently held the position of Associate Director of External Partnership in the Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office of United Health Group and led the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategy for the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Lauren is a native of Indiana and earned a Bachelor of Arts in Communications from Indiana University, Bloomington, and an MBA in Human Resources Management from Indiana Wesleyan University. She is certified as a diversity professional by the Institute of Diversity Certification and holds an executive diversity coaching certification from Howard University. She's an engaged community member and leader and was recognized as a 2020 honoree by the Minneapolis St. Paul Business Journal for Women in Business. Welcome, Lauren, and would you like to say a few words?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Again, my name is Lauren Reynolds, and I am so thrilled to hold this position. It's an important and impactful role, and I'm excited to come in and use my experience to continue to elevate the work, and excited to work with you all as well. So thank you so much, and I look forward to partnering with you all.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking that step up in Bloomington's. I appreciate that.
Yes.
And appreciate you being here because, yes, this is very important work at a very important time, and we're very thankful to have you on board here. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I will say to both Jessica and Lauren, very happy to have you on board. And as I say to new employees every time we introduce them, welcome aboard. And in a lot of ways, you're the face of Bloomington. The residents of Bloomington, they may know us, they may watch us every now and again, but you're the folks that they're going to interact with on a daily basis. And you represent Bloomington for us to them. And that's a big responsibility, but we've got complete confidence in the work that you're going to be doing and looking forward to the impact that you're going to make on our city of Bloomington. So welcome. Glad to have you here tonight. Council, next on our agenda is the annual report and work plan for the Bloomington Human Rights Commission. So in our city charter, we've got a number of boards and commissions identified throughout the city of Bloomington, and in our city charter is the requirement that these boards and commissions each year report to the city council to give an update on what was accomplished last year and to present their work plan for the coming year. And we are plowing our way through. We had a couple at our last meeting. We've got a couple this meeting. We'll continue to do so just to make sure that the city council is up to speed and in close contact in conjunction with our boards and commissions. Very happy to have Anita Smithson, the chair of our Human Rights Commission, with us this evening to present the work plan and the annual report for the Human Rights Commission. Good evening and welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, Mayor and Council. I'm assuming that the presentation will come up on the screen here. I'll give it a moment. Or maybe I have to.
We all make big assumptions sometimes. I get it, but it's
I shouldn't have said that, but.
If you just stand by, we always have the first one of the evening is always a technical. There we go.
Wonderful. Oh, we're not at the beginning, though.
We're not at the beginning.
Do I have control? All right.
So I don't know.
We'll get there. Here we go.
There we go.
All right. Well, hello. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City Manager. Thank you so much for having me tonight to present the Human Rights Commission 2024 Year in Review and our work plan for 2025. On this first slide here, I just want to thank and recognize all of the community members who have served on the HRC in 2024 and for the new members who will be joining us in 2025. The commissioners have really brought great perspectives to our meetings, and it's been a pleasure to work with them as well as our city staff, Eric and Kayla. All right. So when the Human Rights Commission reflected on 2024 during the development of our work plan for this year, what really bubbled to the top is that we're most proud of the moments that we were able to connect deeply with community. Highlights were the 9 proclamations that we brought forward, and the input and the learning that we gained from the communities that are reflected within those. On this slide, there is pictures at the top of our International Human Rights Day and our Hispanic Heritage Month acceptors, and in the bottom right, the Pride Proclamation acceptors. Being able to uplift and share stories from the community makes these ceremonies for proclamations really meaningful. We enjoy this, and we hope that you do as well. We also had a really successful event in partnership with Normandale Community College, the Just Deeds and Beyond Legacy and Future of Housing Accessibility for All. We were glad to bring community members forward. We had about 60 participants come, share a meal, and learn about racially restrictive covenants and the impacts that they've had on Bloomington, as well as the rest of Minnesota, and the ways that we can move forward as a community to right the wrongs of the past. It will eventually click forward, I think. That direction. Okay, it's like an old TV remote. Okay, so another highlight from 2024 was the opportunities to connect with other boards, commissions, city staff, and community partners. We were able to provide input on the resolution that aligned housing with the BTT strategic plan. We engaged in planning for the 9 Mile Creek corridor as it relates to ADA, and we have continued to advocate for youth transportation solutions citywide. We've also tabled at several city events, including the Farmers Market and Bloomington Pride, which are great opportunities for us. On this slide, you can see a highlight from the local Sun Current newspaper that recognizes the annual Omar Bondarud Award from 2024, which we actually held the ceremony earlier this year. I also want to call out and uplift the work and the partnership from the city and our staff here to continue advancing the city of Bloomington as a place where LGBTQIA+ community members want to be and can safely work and live. The Human Rights Campaign, which is the largest LGBTQIA+ civil rights organization in the United States, has scored Bloomington every year since 2019 on issues of equality. And we've achieved an all-time high score of 96 on the 2024 Municipal Equality Index, which is really impactful. So moving into 2025, we want to continue to do work that is connected to the city's strategies, has impact on current policies, is visible and makes a positive impact on people's lives, and comes with some measure of success. We will continue initiatives that are visible and connected to community, including the proclamations listed here, the annual Omar Bondarud Award, as well as seek opportunities to collaborate with other boards and commissions. We will also continue to work with the city's LGBTQIA+ liaison to provide input for the Municipal Equality Index. While the city has made significant progress for LGBTQIA+ people, there are still some opportunities that the city has to increase their impacts regarding municipal services, which are incredibly important and increasingly so given the current national political climate. Our focus for 2025 is to leverage what resonated in 2024, making authentic connections with the community, seeking to show up and deepen those relationships, and ensure that we're truly understanding our community and what human rights issues are impacting them today. We know Bloomington is a great city filled with incredible and diverse people, and we also know there are many more opportunities to learn about our neighbors and the human rights issues impacting them. So we look forward to continuing to show up, listen, and learn. One of the efforts we would like to do this year is to create resources so that when our commission is out at a farmer's market or some other community event, we would like a blueprint for what that looks like, how we will engage with the community, what information we can gather from them, and what the community gets from their interactions with us. We hope that through this work, we can gain insights that will allow us to take that connection a step further, with the intention of holding 1 to 2 workshops or cultural events in the community. And then, of course, we would like to continue to seek ways to collaborate with others and are open to any special opportunities that may come to us in 2025 from you directly, or from other boards, commissions, or staff. So thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm available for questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chair Smithson. Appreciate it and appreciate the work that your commission does. Council, any questions for Chair Smithson? Councilmember D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Commissioner. Quick question about, and this may be premature just because we have a new Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer here, but I'm curious if we're going to see a more collaborative approach of the Human Rights Commission's work with the Office of Racial Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, and I don't know if you all have had the chance to address that, but I didn't see it in the work plan, so I'm hoping that maybe that's on deck for folks to consider.
Yeah, we have on the agenda for an upcoming meeting to have them in as speakers. We are absolutely really wanting to be able to connect, collaborate, work together wherever possible. But nothing is like formally documented. We don't have a specific project necessarily, but we're absolutely open to that and wanting that.
Council, additional questions? Well, seeing none, thanks much for being here tonight. And pass our thanks and appreciation on to the rest of the commission for the work that you folks do. It is greatly appreciated, and I'll let you know it does not go unnoticed in our city of Bloomington. So thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Thanks. Next up on our agenda, Council, is a, oh, do we have to accept this, don't we? I'm sorry. Here I go, jumping the gun again. Council, I would look for a motion to approve the Human Rights Commission's 2025 work plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Carter to approve the Human Rights Commission's 2025 work plan as presented. No further council discussion on those. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much for catching me on that one. I appreciate that. Now we will move on to item 2.3, the work plan for the 2025 Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission work. We have our chair here, Jonathan Minks, the chair of the park this year. Good evening and welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, and City Council members. I am Leah Hughes, the Deputy Director of Parks and Recreation, and I'm here with Jonathan Minks. As Mayor Bussey just said, that he is a newly elected chair of the Park, Arts, and Recreation Commission. Jonathan is here to present our 2025 work plan for the Park Commission, which will include a brief recap of key 2024 work plan accomplishments, our annual work plan projects that happen every year, and then he will dive into the 2025 Commission initiatives for this year. There is a requested action from staff at the end of this presentation. That is a motion to adopt the 2025 work plan for the Park, Arts, and Recreation Commission. And with that, I will give it over to Jonathan.
Good evening, Chair Minks. Welcome.
Thank you. City Council, Mayor, and city leaders, thank you for the opportunity to present our Commission 2025 work plan and a recap. Park projects under construction. We have the Bryant Park, Tretbow Park, Three Rivers Park District Partnership, the Bloomington Forward projects, including the Bloomington Ice Garden modernization, the Community Health and Wellness Center, and the 9 Mile Creek Corridor renewal. Park maintenance and operational plan completion, and naming rights and sponsorship policy. The Parks and Recreation Department continue to advance the priorities and initiatives identified by the community. Council and Park, the key accomplishments and 2025 work plan initiatives align with the Park System Master Plan. Bloomington Parks users, experiences, and program offers continue to see improvements. The park appreciates the support of the City Council in this effort. Two existing examples are the area updated policies regarding partnerships and efficiency. Three Rivers Park District Partnership. The Three Rivers Park District Agreement builds upon a long-standing partnership to improve efficiencies for both agencies and provide a seamless and high-quality public service, while providing the city enhanced focus on city parks. In 2025, the master agreement with Bloomington Public Schools will provide a similar benefit. On to some of the park projects. The Commission has received monthly progress updates on the Bryant and Tretbow Park projects, hearing, responding to resident feedback along the way. We are pleased at how the designs are responsive to what we've heard from the community. The grand opening of Smith Park was in spring 2024. The commission considered community feedback, recommended the Smith Park playground design, and we are excited to be adding our first of its kind ninja-style challenge course in Bloomington. I personally love that because I have kids, and that is a great way for them to get out, so I love that we're doing that. Bloomington Forward projects. Park will continue to support staff through the planning, design, and construction phases of these projects. The park maintenance and operational plan. The commission is pleased to see another recommendation from the PSMP in progress. We will be reviewing and recommending adoption in 2024. This is exciting work that will help establish common expectations for maintenance of our parks and resources required to meet those expectations. We'll set levels of service and maintenance for all the parks and park amenities and assign needed financial staff resources to match the level of service required. Next, we have a naming rights and sponsorship. Park members participated in the creation of the naming and sponsorship policy that outlines the process for engaging strategic partnerships where businesses, individuals, and organizations provide financial support to the Parks and Recreation entity, such as enterprise facility, trail, field, park, in exchange for brand recognition. Annual park work plan projects. We have joint projects with the Sustainability Commission, cultural art support grant funding review and recommendations, budget fees and CIP review, and park planning and park projects. The Park, Arts, and Recreation Commission completes these projects and initiatives annually. Other accomplishments, annual tasks. We reviewed the proposed fees and capital improvements plans, a 10-year CIP plan. We reviewed the cultural arts support grant programs. We have 1 to 2 park commissioners participate in this application review process annually. And we review the annual P&R budgets and program fees. The 2025 commission initiatives. We have Urban Forestry Master Plan, the Art Center Business Analysis Study, the Sidewalk Plowing Reduction, Master Agreement with Bloomington Public Schools, and the Naming Rights and Sponsorships Consultant under Contract. Urban Forestry Master Plan and Urban Forestry Plan will begin in 2025. The plan will include a citywide canopy assessment, public and private property, boulevard tree inventory, operational assessments, and a written plan. The final plan combines stakeholder public input with the inventory and canopy data collected to shape Bloomington's urban forest for the next 20 years. Park hear monthly updates and will have opportunities to support the planning process during community engagement events and provide input on plan recommendations. The Art Center Business Analysis. Park will support staff as the Art Center undergoes a facility operations analysis over 2025 to identify strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and challenges. The goal is to discover strategic recommendations for a fully updated business model. Bloomington Forward projects serve as a key stakeholder by participating in community engagement, reviewing, and recommend concepts and plan for pricing strategies. Under these, there's the Sidewalk Plowing Reduction Project. Park will support staff as requested community engagement and review project plans as they are developed. Make recommendation for the level of service for sidewalk plowing for 2024 and 2025 winter season. Next, we'll have the master agreement with Bloomington Public Schools. A conversation will continue for a master agreement between the city and Bloomington Public Schools. Park will review the staff plan, make recommendations to council. We will go over fees, facility use, maintenance and scheduling of facilities, payment for services, funding of programs and facilities. Lastly, the naming and sponsorship consultant under contract. Park will support staff as we establish a systematic and consistent approach for official naming and renaming of public spaces, including significant financial sponsorships and corporate naming opportunities. Park will participate in proposal reviews and make recommendations for potential naming and sponsorship opportunities. Park will ensure the given names are consistent with the values and character of the area served and key criteria for determining commemorative names are met. And then lastly, under the Parks and Arts, we would like to give a special thank you to our commissioners. Chris Fleck was our previous chair. He was fantastic. Nicole Abraham was the vice chair. She did a great job as well. Daryl Eager is no longer with us. He did a wonderful job providing input. Of course, myself, Toby, is it Peger? And JC, she couldn't be here tonight. She is the new vice chair, and Haneen. And with that, we are happy to take any questions or comments from City Council and Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the update. Council, any questions for Chair Minks? I actually do have one. I appreciate you had one of your bullet points, joint projects with the Sustainability Commission. And I know Chair Smithson brought it up as well, that we're trying to get our boards and commissions to work more together and to make sure that their work is aligned in a lot of different ways. This year, really the big rollout over in the Port Authority will be the creative placemaking, moving citywide through the Port Authority and throughout the city. And just wondering if you've had discussions with the creative placemaking folks, because obviously I think the most obvious landing spot for a lot of our art pieces through creative placemaking would be within our city parks. Wondering where those conversations are, if there's planned work together with the creative placemaking group as well.
Mayor Bussey, thank you for the question. We actually had a meeting with the creative placemaking staff just last week to discuss some of those things. So they're already partnering with us for some park projects. One example is the Pond House project that is happening. In tonight's Community Health and Wellness Center, you'll hear about how working with the Sustainability Commission has crossed over with the Community Health and Wellness Center. And then between the park projects coming up where there will be public art, the Community Health and Wellness Center is our next big topic. So once we get through the schematic design set, hopefully this week, we are going to have another meeting with the creative placemaking folks about mid-March to discuss some of the ins and outs of what that partnership will look like. But they're looking to put art on the inside and the outside of the community center building, in addition to several other parks, actually.
Good. Thank you. Glad to hear that.
Yeah,
Good to hear.
thank you for the question.
Council, additional questions? All right. Chair Minks, if you could pass on to your council, your park group, our thanks and appreciation for the work that they do. I know they've got a very visible role and a lot going on right now, so appreciate the work that you folks do, and if you could share that with them and keep up the good work, we'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I can make the motion if you'd like.
Councilmember D'Alessandro.
I will move to approve the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission Park 2025 Work Plan.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember D'Alessandro, second by Councilmember Mua, to approve the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission 2025 Work Plan. No further council discussion on this? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, Council, is item 3, our consent business. Councilmember Lohman has our consent items tonight. Councilmember Lohman.
Mayor, I'll make my first and final look to see if anybody wants to hold anything other than 3.1. Seeing none, I'll move to pass through 3.2 through 3.12.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Carter, to accept tonight's consent business as stated, item 3.2 through 3.12. No further council discussion on this? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Lohman, item 3.1, resolution to accept donations.
Thank you, Mayor. We have received a number of different donations, both large and small. So we've got a few $100 checks from various folks out in the community. And then we also have different donations in terms to our co-ed division for our outreach and engagement, which is very important. And then we also have donations going to our police department in the amounts of $1,000, $2,500, $110 from just various organizations such as Larkin Hoffman, Rosemary Townsend, David and Teresa Heron, and just a number of other folks who have contributed to our city, too numerous to name. But I do know that our staff will send a thank you note of appreciation for their donations that they've given from the community members to our city, and we thank you for that. And with that, then, Mayor, I'd move to adopt a resolution to accept those donations that are listed here through Exhibit G.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Rivas to accept item 3.1, the resolution to accept donations as listed in tonight's consent business. No further council discussion on this? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Councilmember Lohman. Appreciate your work there. Moving on to item 4, our hearings, resolutions, and ordinances. As I mentioned at our start, we have 3 public hearings this evening. We will kick off with item 4.1. This is a public hearing regarding the Heights Tax Increment Financing District. Kenny Niemeyer from our HRA is here. Good evening, Mr. Niemeyer.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. We'll get us the slides here. So yes, this item is the Heights Tax Increment Financing District. So a refresher, the project is a major renovation of the Heights parking structure, which has had its certificate of occupancy revoked by the city in response to acute deterioration of that structure. The project also includes replacement of balconies that are not code compliant, and it also brings the components of the parking structure into compliance in terms of building accessibility. The restoration of that parking structure will ensure that the condominium is compliant with our zoning requirements for minimum parking minimums as well. The project doesn't result in any zoning or land use changes. So I've listed here the actions associated with the current application for the Heights HIA, and that leaves off about 7 years of other history, which includes the 2 previous applications for HIA financing. Those, you'll recall, were not recommended for approval by staff because the financial burden resulting from the HIA was thought to be too financially burdensome for the Heights owners. So in terms of this current application, it's their 3rd application, and the City Council voted at its public hearing to first move that item for final consideration to December 2nd, and then it voted to approve that HIA request at that meeting. And that request was for a recommended finance package. So that finance package includes multiple components, which allowed for affordability for the Heights owners. And the components include bonds and interfund loans from interfund loan from the HRA. Both the bond and interfund loan will be repaid with interest by the Heights owners over the 20-year financing term. The package also includes the establishment of a tax increment financing district, which allows for a further decrease of the eventual assessment amount, and it also increases the security of repayment of the bond. Finally, the council and the HRA approved $250,000 of local affordable housing aid (LAHA) funds in the form of direct income-based assistance, and that funding, after that approval, staff have gone and solicited applications from the Heights owners. There were 6 households that qualified. 5 of those are owner-occupied, who they qualified through their income, and then the remaining household is a unit that's being rented and will have an affordable rent level set as a result of this assistance. And so that brings us to tonight's item, which is consideration of the approval of the TIF district, which is a redevelopment TIF district. So we're going to go through briefly the statutory findings that have to be made to establish a redevelopment TIF district. So the first one listed here is that there has to be an assessment that the structure is structurally substandard, and we had the city building official conduct that assessment and made that finding that the building is structurally substandard. The next statutory finding is the but-for test, that the project would not proceed but for the use of tax increment financing. And so in this case, because TIF allows for the level of affordability that's part of that financial package, that package and this project are only possible with TIF. Without TIF, the financial package wouldn't work as approved and would have to be completely restructured, which means the project wouldn't be able to proceed as currently approved. The next finding is that the TIF plan affords maximum opportunity for the project to proceed. Again, this gets to the TIF allowing for affordability to the Heights owners, as well as it also achieves security for repayment of the bonds and the interfund loan. And then the final finding is that the TIF plan conforms with general development plans for the city as a whole. And so with recent TIF districts, the Planning Commission looks at this finding, and the Planning Commission considered making this finding at their January 30th meeting, but ultimately did not make that finding due to concerns about the usage of TIF for this particular project. And due to that, the council tonight, in the resolution for your consideration tonight, is a clause that would make that finding. So that would fulfill the 4 statutory findings that are needed to establish a redevelopment TIF district. So the map here shows the district boundary areas, which are coterminous with the Heights parcel, and that includes all 30 of the condominium units as well as their owned parking garage units. So that's the squares and the circles. We've highlighted here the goals from the Forward 2040 Comprehensive Plan that align with the projected accomplishments of this TIF plan. And then I'll go briefly through next steps. So with tonight's public hearing, if this item is approved, then tomorrow evening the HRA board will consider final approval of the TIF district. If these items are all approved, then the HRA would enter into a development agreement with the Heights Condominium Association, and at that point, funding could be made available for construction start to begin. Construction start could potentially begin then in May, and the project would be completed by the end of 2025. And then there are also items, there's one additional item that the City Council would consider, which is a resolution to accept the negotiated bond sale. And that would come sometime in spring, depending on the construction timeline and when those funds are needed. So the resolution is to accept the proposal that is selected through an RFP process, which would be, the RFP process is conducted by the city's municipal advisor, Baker Tilly. And once those actions are completed, we'll know the final interest rate for the bond and the rest of the financing package, at which point we can recalculate what the HIA fees are, not to exceed what was approved in that HIA ordinance, as I mentioned. And then at that point, those assessments would be sent to the county. And so with that, there's a recommended motion, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Niemeyer. I appreciate it. I just had a question regarding the timing of this. So the council making this decision tonight and the HRA making final approval tomorrow night, is that how it would typically work in this type of thing, or are we out of order a bit?
Mayor, council members, from my review of previous consideration of establishing a TIF district, there isn't necessarily a consistency with the order of those things, because this project is being substantially subsidized by the HRA. Staff recommended that the HRA would be the establisher of this TIF district. And again, there hasn't been a consistent ordering. But because it's an HRA district, the thought was that the HRA would have the final say and final approval.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. And just one more clarification. So the Planning Commission rejected this based on the fact of the public purpose finding. Is that correct? And could you explain that a little bit more for the council?
Mayor and Council, the Planning Commission did not make a finding that the TIF plan aligns with the city's general plans for development as a whole. And I would characterize the discussion as honing in on the use of TIF for this particular project and whether that it was a suitable use for TIF. So there was discussion on what components of the comp plan align, as well as some discussion on if the plans for redevelopment as a whole, the outlined goals for redevelopment as a whole in the comp plan align with the specific use for TIF. And I'll also mention that it was a split vote, so 3 vote to 2 vote to not make that finding. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Council, questions of Mr. Niemeyer before we open the public hearing? All right. Thank you, Mr. Niemeyer. Don't go far. With that, as I said, this is a public hearing on item 4.1, and I'm going to open the public hearing here in just a moment. For our public hearings, what we do here in the city of Bloomington, a couple of things. First of all, we will allow anyone who wants to speak to come up and speak. We ask that you state your name and ultimately sign in so we know who's talking. We do put a 5-minute limit on anyone speaking, and we've got our shot clock right up on the wall. And I will hold you to the 5 minutes, not because I'm a mean guy, but because I want to make sure that everybody has the same amount of time and we don't give deferential treatment to anyone. No one has more than 5 minutes to speak on any topic at any public hearing that we do here in the city of Bloomington. If you ask specific questions, we're not going to try and answer them on the fly. That never seems to work very well. So what we'll do is collect all the questions and then answer them after the public hearing is closed. Staff will help us out and we'll answer all the questions for the questions that you might have. And I think that's everything. Did I forget anything? I did not. So with that, I will open the public hearing at item 4.1 this evening. So if you would like to speak, please step on forward, and you're certainly welcome. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Doug Strainness. I am a third-party consultant. I've been working with the Heights on this project for 8 years, and very grateful that we are now to this point. The parking garage structure, if this does not go forward, is on the verge of collapse. And if that happens, then the building is probably going to become uninhabitable. So thank you for considering this. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Strainness. If you could sign in, you can actually take it with you and sit down with it if you like. You don't have to stand right there, or you certainly can, whatever you'd like to do. Anyone else like to speak here in the chambers?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm Melanie McCallum, and I spoke before about the Heights. I acquired the property a year ago for my daughter. She has a lot of anxiety problems and depression issues and other things, and this has certainly added to that. Really had no idea that any of this was really in the books or going on. It never was very clear to begin with why it wasn't approved. The price would just only go up and up and up. I'm not exactly sure why it was allowed to get in such a bad state of disrepair without being addressed. And quite honestly, I thought that all of this had been approved and that everything was going to be okay. I didn't know it was back on the chopping block again. So I'm just wondering exactly what has happened, because I already feel like we've all been on a roller coaster, and I'm feeling rather upset about it. So if anyone could explain to me what's gone down, I'd appreciate it.
I appreciate your coming forward and asking. It is, I think what you're seeing is the sausage of city government. Yeah. And it's the sausage making of city government. The city council addressed this and approved this through the HIA, and I think through a 6-0 and a 7-0 vote, moved forward with this. This is just the next step in the process, is officially approving the TIF district to make this all happen. All right. Others who wish to speak? Caitlin, do we have anyone online wishing to speak?
No, Mayor, there's no one online.
Last call for anyone in the council chambers who wishes to speak on item 4.1. Council, no one coming forward to speak, and we've got no one online wishing to speak. I would look for a motion to close the public hearing on item 4.1.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember D'Alessandro to close the public hearing. No further council discussion on this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, I violated my rule of not answering the question, but I thought we could answer that question just kind of quick and easy. Mr. Niemeyer, is there anything that I missed in terms of the process and the steps here that might explain things a bit better for Ms. McCollum?
Mayor, council members, I think you characterized it well, that this TIF district approval and then tomorrow night's TIF district approval are the main components remaining to implement what was part of that financial package. And then there would be the item for accepting a bond proposal, but that's more of accepting a proposal that already is existing versus approving or denying a component of the financing.
Very good. Thank you for that. So council, as I said, we discussed this and we approved the HIA, and I think we were in strong favor of trying to make this work out, trying to figure out a way to make this work. I think it was a creative funding package that was put together. I think a lot of pieces had to come together, and frankly, it sounds like just in the nick of time. And I think that we have a good plan in front of us, and I think a good solution to move forward for the residents who would clearly and obviously be impacted if the parking structure would fail completely. So that's where we are. Councilmember D'Alessandro, additional comments, questions?
I have a quick question and then a comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor. Quick question for you, Mr. Niedermeyer. Do you know what the insurance obligation for the Heights is as a result of this work, and what I'm thinking about the worst case scenario that, in the next year or something like that, something outside of control happens. What is the kind of insurance program that they have around the structure? Will that change as part of what we're doing here? Will that improve potentially as a result? Do you know anything about that piece? Thanks.
Mayor, council members, thanks for the question. One component I can share is that part of the development agreement that the HRA will enter into with the association includes an annual reporting requirement, and that will include financial reports as well as annual physical condition inspections of the improvements once they're made. So from that perspective, the city will have direct insight of how those improvements are performing. And then from an insurance standpoint, I don't think I have a full answer to your question, but I will say part of the request that came to the city was that they were being rejected for certain insurance products. And so the thought would be that restoring the building would allow them to be eligible for those products once again.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. I might make that a part of the development agreement, that you get that certificate on file once they have it, if they can. Yeah. So my comment is just that I'm really grateful that we're here for the residents that live in that association. I think oftentimes that we default to using TIF districts for economic development for businesses, but we don't think about the fact that our residents can benefit from this kind of redevelopment work. And so hats off to the HRA. And I know this is their third strike at this particular challenge, and to finally have something that gets over the line is a really important thing. So I'm just grateful that we are here now and that we don't wait any longer to help these people. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Others? Seeing no hands go up, Council, I would look for action on item 4.1 this evening. Councilmember D'Alessandro. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Mua.
Happy to do that, Mayor. I would move to adopt a resolution approving the Heights redevelopment project area, approving the redevelopment plan, therefore, establishing the Heights tax increment financing redevelopment district, and approving a tax increment financing plan, therefore.
Motion by Councilmember Lewis, second by Councilmember D'Alessandro to approve the resolution approving the Heights redevelopment project area. No further council discussion on this? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So next steps, tomorrow night for the HRA, and then as Mr. Niedermeyer laid out, hopefully we can get this moving, and by the end of this year we can have this resolved and have you parking inside again. So let's all hope. So, all right. Thank you. Thanks all for being here tonight. Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item 4.2 on our agenda. This is our second public hearing. This is regarding city code amendments for RS1 and R1A districts ordinance. Mr. Nick Johnson, our planning manager, is with us again this evening. Good evening, Mr. Johnson. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and members. Happy to present this to you one additional time. Yeah, we'll just jump right into it. I didn't mean that as a pejorative. Just a quick agenda slide, what I plan to talk about here more briefly. Just a point of background about this project. So the RS1 zoning district ordinance followed the single and two family updates that were approved in May of 2023. The council directed the planning commission and planning staff to look at that zoning district in a similar fashion. So it was added to the work plan and is currently on the 2025 work plan. We've held multiple study sessions to date on this topic, first with the Planning Commission. The first council study session took place in February of 24. There was a pause while some legislation was being considered at the state related to zoning applicable to low-density residential areas, so effectively there was a pause. And then we came back in two subsequent study sessions to develop the consensus that's reflected in the ordinance before you this evening. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on January 30th on this ordinance. They did recommend approval unanimously. There was a relatively brief meeting or little discussion. Just 2 points of context in the background of this project. A 2024 work plan project, the Environmental Standards Review, that looked at our tree preservation, steep slope standards in our zoning code applicable to low-density residential areas. And then, as I mentioned before, just the element of that the state legislature is again looking at similar type legislation applicable to low-density residential areas. So that's something that's outside the control of the city. Just an overview of where these lots are located and just some general information about them. So again, RS1 is the large lot residential zoning district. It's 116 lots. They're effectively located in 3 neighborhoods on the west side of Normandale Boulevard. There's 2 other parcels at the bottom of Normandale that were a result of privately initiated rezoning action. And so they're, for the most part, larger lots located in heavily wooded areas, oftentimes with more grade or steeper slopes, kind of on the backside of Highland Park there. So just getting to the intent statement, hopefully this helps guide some of the actions we're making tonight, but just a note about the intent statement of these 2 districts. So it kind of matches that description that I just provided you in terms of what these neighborhoods are. They're single family residential development in areas of steep slopes, vegetation, wetlands, and developed as large lots. The second element of that intent statement talks about protecting natural resources and having compatible redevelopment. Getting on to the R1A zoning district, this isn't a zoning district we talk about a lot because there's only 7 of these properties in the city. It's very similar in standards to the RS1 zoning district, except they're lots that are served by septic. So they're not effectively served by sanitary sewer service. The grade just doesn't work out for these sites. And so that is why there's some separate standards applicable to these lots, because they're the remnant properties in Bloomington that are not hooked up to the city sewer system. Very similar standards and intent to the RS1, except for this issue of served by sanitary sewer service. So that's noted directly in the intent. So just as a reminder, refresher, kind of where the Planning Commission and Council landed on some of its feedback, ultimately on some of these standards, we wrote it down as consensus to proceed. The way that we kind of interpret that is just that there was a majority of members who were favorable towards including that element of the ordinance in the final version before the public hearing. I would note that neither body advanced or reached a majority on wanting to amend the minimum lot size in the RS1 district. So we'll just note that. And then there was some difference initially from the Planning Commission perspective on median site width and prevailing setback. They did support it in the final ordinance that they just reviewed in January, but just a note about that, I think I don't want to read too closely between the lines in terms of what was motivating their perspective on that at that time, but the way I interpret it is that it was just kind of leave well enough alone kind of approach. But yeah, just to provide you an idea of how we got to where we're at. And if you recall, in the last city council study session, we went through a series of options of ordinances. The option before you that is advanced is option 1A. It had to do with the items that had the most consensus as reflected in this table. So what are the elements of the ordinance? I'm going to run through these quick. I know we've spoken about these at length, so I don't mean to be repetitive. We certainly can return back to these if there are questions. So first, just the RS1 district intent statement. This is some changes in formatting and just noting who and what sections of the code are the authority of what establishes what some of these elements are. So steep slopes, for example, that's something defined in our code. The city forester adding in that element to determine bring some expertise to it. Wetlands, that's a defined thing in Minnesota rules. So just adding in some of these references that make it a little bit less unclear who makes that determination. And then another change related to this intent statement was adding a minimum of 2 of those characteristics. Getting to the use changes proposed within the ordinance, there's really 2 categories of them. One is just adding 2 family dwellings to RS1, again with R1A being on septic. Didn't feel that was appropriate for that district, but just adding it into RS1 because the city's comprehensive plan guides these areas low density residential. 2 family dwellings are an appropriate use in LDR in our comp plan. And then getting to the accessory institutional uses, there currently are no institutional uses or non-residential uses in either RS1 or R1A. We think that these may have been added just across the board in all of our residential districts without much foresight in terms of the allowances for some of the institutional uses. I should note government facilities aren't allowed use in all of our zoning districts, but suffice to say, we just don't foresee the use of that district being the main mechanism by which you'd want to support institutional uses. So just removing some accessory uses that support institutional uses in those 2 districts, if that makes sense. In the third item, so median site width, this was a standard adopted in the late 2000s in order to address some concerns around subdivisions within residential neighborhoods in Bloomington. And so what this standard does is effectively requires that lots meet the site width of 80% of the median of lots within 500 feet of a site. Staff's position on this in general is just that it adds complexity, that the minimum lot areas of these 2 districts are so large to the degree that it effectively maintains neighborhood character. So happy to talk more about that if needed. On the impervious surface piece, so in R1A, there actually isn't a percentage cap on impervious surface in the R1A, and the reason being is that there's a separate impervious standard for very large lots that kick in. There is one lot in the R1A district that is not a very large lot and effectively would have allowances for impervious surface far above 35% as a result of that. It's kind of a regulatory loophole for that property. And just adding in this 35% mechanism there. And then finally, prevailing setback. So we've talked about this one at length through the R1 district changes. And at other moments, what this standard does is, again, it's another neighborhood continuity standard, but effectively if you're doing an addition or building a new structure next to long-established properties, you have to meet the average of the setback of the 2 properties next to you. So this tends to, again, increase complexity. It adds some surveying costs to these processes. And what staff has found is in some cases actually has some unintended environmental consequences. Oftentimes some of the best building pad area are actually located closer to the street in these areas. So what can happen, in addition to having a longer driveway, increased costs associated with that, more stormwater runoff, can sometimes result in additional grading or tree removal that otherwise would not have been necessary. So recommending to remove that. And I would note with this one and median site width, these are two standards that were removed from the R1 district in May of 2023. So just trying to build more alignment between our residential districts. So with that, happy to present a recommendation, happy to stand for questions, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Council questions for Mr. Johnson. Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just for quick clarification, RS1 and R1A, you're recommending that essentially all of the standards be identical to R1. They would allow two-family. The institutional uses, as the table showed, would be the same. You eliminated median site width and setback and impervious surface. I think the only difference that I saw, and maybe I'm wrong about this, is R1A, because of its sewer connections, would not necessarily allow the two-family houses. Am I misunderstanding that?
Mayor, Councilmember Nelson, the majority of what you said is correct. The one wrinkle I will add to that, though, is that actually the use list of things allowed in R1 is fairly expansive because of the fact that the city of Bloomington does not have a dedicated institutional use or public facilities use zoning district. The R1 district effectively serves that purpose, so R1 allows a wide variety of non-residential uses subject to standards. The city's fire stations, for example, are zoned R1, places of assembly. So the use list is quite a bit different. Many of the performance standards you mentioned, there is some similarities there, but yes, I would agree that in terms of the bulk standards, the lot size is the primary difference between some of those things.
Councilmember Lohman.
Just a quick question. I want to thank you for your commentary when you responded to my questions earlier today. I appreciate that. It was helpful. The only real question that I have is in terms of this particular zone, and in terms of now we've made these, if we were to pass this evening, the impact of this, does staff see this possibility of this moving to any other part of the city where folks might want to apply to utilize this? And what do you think about that? That reality?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Lohman, it's really going to depend on the nature of the request. So if you recall at some of our study sessions, we talked about criteria for rezoning. The first and foremost criteria we look at when someone's interested in rezoning is what is the intent statement of that district. So if I can go back to that for RS1, this in effect serves as kind of the roadmap or criteria that we look to in terms of whether the area that is being requested to be rezoned really meets those intent statements. So this is what we would look to first. The second thing then is the bulk or performance standards. So what are the size of the lots? A large lot really is a subjective thing. You'll find in many different cities the standards do not align or are all consistent between all cities in terms of what they consider large lots. In some cities that's an acre. In some cities it's half an acre. In Bloomington and RS1 it's 3/4 of an acre. So it really varies across the board. And consistent with the other actions that the city has made in terms of some of the rezonings that have happened in RS1, not every single one of those lots meets the minimum lot size. That doesn't mean that the action was inappropriate or not permissive or not permitted, but generally speaking, what we would like to see just in terms of a staff and trying to execute best practices is that the majority of an area, if you're rezoning the site, it meets the bulk standards of that district. That's where you get into situations of nonconformity or other things that can exist. So I don't anticipate a large number of rezoning requests. I think it would depend on the precise area of what was coming forward to be requested to be rezoned. And I think that this question was a major driving force or an element within the discussion of whether or not to change the minimum lot size. If you're lowering the minimum lot size, then certainly that opens up more avenues if the city is following its kind of traditional or past practice in terms of application of the district. Those neighborhoods were at least, I think in most cases, at least 50% of those neighborhoods met that larger lot size of 33,000. So that's kind of another bar.
Thank you. Just kind of the question I asked myself, if we were to pass this tonight, Mayor, does that open up more opportunities to have this discussion again with more neighborhoods? And I just want to be sure that I'm asking the question now as opposed to later on.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other questions of Mr. Johnson before we open the public hearing? All right. Don't go far, Mr. Johnson.
I will not.
This is a public hearing on item 4.2 regarding the city code amendments, RS1 and R1A districts ordinance. If you were here just as we had our last public hearing, the process is the same. If you'd like to speak, come forward. We'd ask you to identify yourself. Everybody gets 5 minutes, and we will answer the questions at the end of the public hearing. So I will officially open item 4.2, the public hearing. Anyone in the council chambers wishing to come forward to speak on item 4.2?
Hello, Mayor, City Council. My name is Robert Coleman. I'm a resident of Bloomington since 2007 or 8. I can never remember. I am here briefly to endorse what Sean Nelson said at I believe the last work session, that having a zone in Bloomington where to have single-family residential that has large lot sizes for the purpose of large lot sizes, to its own end, is not particularly worth preserving. I think that if you look at a lot of these lots, it doesn't really, a lot of them don't really do a whole lot to preserve the what is there. Sod, we all know that sod grass isn't a very diverse ecosystem, and a lot of the areas that aren't actually RS1, like on the bluff areas, seem like actually preserve what is there a lot better than what RS1 really does, and that's because RS1 doesn't do a whole lot to actually preserve what is there other than having a large lot. And when you have large lots, it has a lot of pressure regionally, where if you have, because there are fewer houses in Bloomington as compared to, per acre compared to Richfield or Minneapolis, you have more of a pressure on the outwardmost communities to take parkland, take farmland, and to convert it to really low density residential. And I think that having RS1, maybe RS1 doesn't necessarily need to exist, or to reduce the minimum lot size so that it has no advantage over R1. Because a lot of the reason why a lot of these communities have large lot sizes is not necessarily to protect the environment. It is so that they can say, oh, you can't really live in our neighborhood if you can't afford 3/4 of an acre, if you can't afford to have, one car for every adult. That's oftentimes, that is the driving force. It's not necessarily protecting the environment. So I would say that finding a way to make it more consistent with R1 so that RS1 doesn't have a significant advantage in terms of the lot size and therefore the cost of these properties, because oftentimes that excludes people. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Others in the chambers wishing to speak? Caitlin, do we have anyone on the phone who wishes to speak?
Mayor, there's no one on the phone.
Last call for anybody in the chambers? Council seeing no one coming forward, no one's on the phone wishing to speak. I would look for a motion to close the public hearing on item 4.2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Mua to close the public hearing on item 4.2. No further council discussion on this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. So council, I think it was interesting though. Our first council study session on this was literally 1 year ago. So we've chewed this one up. We've talked about this quite a bit. I think our last study session, where we were able to go through item by item, and perhaps not come to anonymity, but came to consensus, unanimity, not anonymity, unanimity, but consensus. I think we were able to move forward on this, and I appreciate what the staff and the Planning Commission have brought forward and have approved to this point. Any additional thoughts or questions, Council? Councilmember Lohman?
And Mayor, just some comments here. We've really come a long ways on this, and when I look at the the R1 district, and I think about what we've done with that. and some may disagree, in terms of what we did there. But, I think we've kind of taken a step in a direction. And I think what this particular item does is, we had the history of this particular zoning in our city. And, when we look at we had this historic district here for various reasons. And, I have to concede it's hard when I look at the definition that's there. The idea of exclusivity, I think it may be there, but I think the question I ask myself as a policymaker, Mayor, is, are we moving in the direction of moving that district towards that R1 that we've already done? And when I look at these, the steps and the things that we've kind of taken, I think it does that. I think it moves this in that particular direction. I certainly know the need for more housing variety that's out there. Now certainly there's concerns around the regulatory issues that are there, that's going to create some problems. But it does maintain that, that neighborhood consistency and aesthetic piece for how it is today. We recognize, in terms of those folks, that their property rights and what they have there. I think this helps to kind of, again, do that portion. And maybe there is some environmental sustainability. I haven't, again, on the sustainability piece, really seen where this really kind of gets it done. But I think overall what this does is just moves this forward. And for those reasons and many other that I've stated in the past, I don't need to rehash those things. I think I can be okay with where this is today. So I do think that there are those folks who have purchased their homes, and this is the idea that they've kind of come into this. This moves it down the road, and I think that maybe another council, 4 to 10 years from now might say, hey, you know what? Let's have another look at this. Let's open this up, or maybe in a different place to kind of get this even closer to an R1. So that's where I stand today with this, and I can support what this is today. I am a little bit nervous about other folks taking this and expanding that. That's exactly what I don't want to have happen, but I can live with this today.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember D'Alessandro.
I may have the opposite opinion, Mr. Mayor, in that I don't know why we would have a district on the blocks that we couldn't let people petition into. So I think that people should come and petition if they want to. We can reject it if we don't like it, but that's what it's there for. So I'll be of that opinion, and I would encourage people to do that, because once again, my biggest challenge, and I know that I'm going to get told that this is not the case, but I do think it's the case that we don't have a good environmental plan today that preserves space outside of our own parks districts, or our own parks. And I care about that deeply. That won't be a surprise to anybody. And so, I don't think zoning is the right use for that, but that's what we have today. Absent an environmental overlay, absent those other practices, and I know the Sustainability Commission has something on their plan for Work 2025, that's great. But absent that, this is what we have. And so I'm not going to be super interested ever in continuing to contract development land for development until we have those other levers in place. And so that's why you're going to see me resisting that every day around here, because I think that those things are paramount and in fact should apply to the city regardless of its zoning district. If that all happens, and at the end of 2025, we are at a point where we have something that can be applied equally across the city and make those environmental determinations, then I might be open to getting rid of RS1 altogether. But I'm not there now, and I want people to use it to preserve the land if that's the one mechanism they have at their disposal to do that today. I think, and so that's the reason I think that we got to where we were with the consensus. And given that the 5 things that are on here are the things that are on the request today, and we're not getting pushed into something that I can't oppose, that I would oppose. I feel like what we've got in front of us is pretty good for today. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Others? Councilmember Nelson.
Thanks, Mayor. And my apologies. I'm just going to repeat everything I've said before. If we want to move in the direction of R1 zoning, we should just go there. With regards to property rights, I believe in the property rights of the people that own that property. Zoning isn't our only option. As a matter of fact, this ordinance specifically notes our steep slope ordinance we already have in place. It notes the wetland Minnesota rules. We have tree preservation rules. We can do this citywide. We actually are doing it citywide, and we can do it more citywide if we want to. Instead, what we're doing is providing an opportunity for people to protect large lots. Pure and simple. That's what this is about. With all due respect to the folks that first brought this up, the reason it got brought up was someone was going to build another house. And yet they can cut down all those trees, as we've discussed before, to put in a sport court or a pool, or they get diseased or whatever reason they want. They can cut down those trees. The one reason they can't cut down those trees is to subdivide that lot and build another house. That's what this ordinance does. And to expand that beyond where it is today is absolutely the wrong direction in my mind. I think Councilmember Lohman was correct. If this goes more towards R1, I think that's good. I think we should just go there. And we should just go to R1. And everyone live by the same rules in the city for residential housing. Now, I do recognize that there are reasons to have a larger lot. Where my office is, just to the south of it, I drive by Orchard Lake, and there are large lots there. They have horses. They have farms. These are hobby farms. There's a completely different use than a single-family house. As a matter of fact, in Burnsville, there used to be a horse right across from City Hall. So grandfather did for a while. I don't believe that horse is any longer there. But I think, frankly, we should not pass this. Or, in the alternative, we should take the one thing that is different, substantially different between RS1 and R1, is the lot size, and make that the same. Just make the lot size the same. If that's not the issue, then just make it the same. I'll vote for that. But I think we can do all of the things that are important to us with regards to protecting steep slopes, protecting our natural environment, all through ordinances. And I think that because we already are.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Rivas.
Just my 2 cents. I can't talk for very long, but I probably oppose everybody here. I think that people have the right to own their size that they, if I bought an acre 20 years ago and I want to remain owning that property that size, I think I have the right to do that. I mean, I don't own that big of a lot, but I think for whatever reason, if somebody owns more than an acre in the city, whether they have a steep slopes or not, whether it's in the middle of all the houses that are half or 1/3 the size, I think they have the right to do that. So I think from what I remember discussing this last year, we had come to a consensus that we're not all happy with it, but I think it's a very good decision that we have made. But I also believe that everybody has the right to own whatever size lot they own and be happy with it. So RS1, I'm not opposed to it, but at the same time, we did discuss all this last year. And we came to as close as possible as we all agreed to, and it's a good compromise. So I'll support it 100%, even though I do have my contradiction within it. Right? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Moat.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'll take my shot at this, right? I don't have much to say. All to say is everyone's seen how the sausage is made now, and compromise is compromise. None of us are really happy with either direction this is leaning. But I think the risk is not moving forward. I think this is a step forward instead of just sitting and standing still like we have previously with other issues. So I'll support this for the fact that we're taking a step forward, we're making progress, and we're not just going to sit and let it be.
Thank you, Councilmember. I think everybody has had an opportunity here, Council. Hearing no others, I would look for action on item 4.2, noting that on your motion sheet, we actually, the summary publication motion kind of blended together with the recommended approval. So that we can't do that. So there are two motions in that large paragraph that you see on your motion sheet. So, Councilmember D'Alessandro.
Okay, so the first one is a motion to adopt an ordinance updating several standards applicable to the large lot single-family residential RS1 and restricted large lot single-family residential R-1A zoning districts, thereby amending Chapter 21 of the City Code.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember D'Alessandro, second by Councilmember Carter, to approve the ordinance updating several standards applicable to large lot single-family residences RS1 and restricted large lot single-family residences R1A zoning districts. No further council discussion on this? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 6-1 with Councilmember Nelson in opposition. Now the second half of that block, summary publication, Councilmember D'Alessandro.
Sure. I am making a motion to adopt a resolution directing summary publication of an ordinance updating several standards applicable to the RS1 and R-1A zoning districts, thereby amending Chapter 21 of the City Code.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember D'Alessandro, second by Councilmember Carter for summary publication on item 4.2 this evening. No further council discussion on this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Thanks for your years-long work on this and the good work that went into it. Thanks for the neighbors who have had led us with a good discussion on this. I mean, this has been a good conversation, and as I think was brought up, it's the perfect compromise. Nobody's happy, so that's how it always works. So we will move on to item 4.3, which is our final public hearing of the evening. This is a vacation of public drainage and utility easements for the HYUNDAI edition, the PANNEKOEKEN edition, and the INFINITI SATURN edition. And I think it's safe to say those three companies have not been mentioned before in a motion or in a public hearing in the city of Bloomington, but I'm guessing they just haven't. Julie Long, our city engineer, is here with us tonight. Ms. Long.
Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to clarify for the public that none of those companies are coming back to this location. They're the names of the historic plats, so they got named in 1984, and because this parcel that is owned by Luther is not going through replatting, it's going through a tax parcel combination, we're naming all four parcels by their historic names, which has caused some confusion and some disappointment with the public.
Thank you for the clarification.
So we're here tonight to have the public hearing for a vacation of the existing easements of the four lots. So those easements run through the middle of the parcel, and council has previously, in September of 2024, approved the redevelopment for Luther Kia, and as you can imagine, existing easements running through the future building is problematic for them. So they're looking to vacate the easements tonight. As I mentioned, we are not going through replatting. We're doing a tax parcel combination. And with the city's future North Central Sanitary Sewer project, we needed to replace that sanitary sewer easement. So that is also one of the motions that you see before you, and they will happen sort of simultaneous like the plats do. It has to be recorded with Hennepin County, and so that's when the vacation would become in effect, and then the new easement would go in place. We also heard from a couple private utility companies, CenterPoint, who had some concerns with some easements, and so those will also be redone on this parcel, but council doesn't have to act on those because those are a private entity with private entity easements. So there are three motions before you. One for the new sanitary sewer easement, one for the vacations of all the existing easements, and then a summary publication.
Council, any questions of Ms. Long on this one? No questions? All right. We will open this public hearing. This is item 4.3 on our agenda. This is a public hearing regarding the vacation of public drainage and utility easements for the HYUNDAI edition, the PANNEKOEKEN edition, and the INFINITI SATURN edition, Hennepin County, and a resolution accepting permanent sanitary sewer easement. Anyone in the council chambers wishing to speak on item 4.3 this evening? Caitlin, do we have anyone on the line?
Mayor, there's no one online.
Last call for anybody in the council chambers? Council, no one on the phone? Seeing no one stepping forward to speak in the council chambers, I would look for a motion to close the public hearing on item 4.3.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Mua to close the public hearing on item 4.3. No further council discussion on this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. So, Council, are we clear on this, other than the confusion about the names that aren't really there anymore, and we're actually just doing this as a little different than what we typically do with the platting and with replatting? This will work. Any other questions on this? If not, I would look for motion. Councilmember Lohman.
Mayor, I want to do this because I've always wanted to say PANNEKOEKEN at a council meeting. So, Mayor, I'll move to adopt a 2025 resolution accepting a permanent sanitary sewer easement over and under and across the vacation of a public draining and a utility easement over and under and across the lot, Lot 1, Block 1, HYUNDAI Edition, and Lot 1 and 3, Block 1, INFINITI SATURN Edition, Hennepin County, Minnesota.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Mua to adopt the resolution as stated, the first motion for item 4.3. Any further council discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Lohman.
Mayor, I'll move to adopt an ordinance approving the vacation of a public drainage and utility easements over and under and across lots 1, 2, Block 1, HYUNDAI Edition, lots 1, 2, Block 1, PANNEKOEKEN House Edition, and lots 1 and 3, Block 1, INFINITI SATURN Edition, Hennepin County, Minnesota.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Mua to adopt the ordinance as stated for our second motion for item 4.3. Hearing no further council discussion on this, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Councilmember Lohman, summary publication, please.
Mayor, I'll move to adopt a resolution authorizing summary publication of the ordinance vacation said public easement.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Mua to authorize summary publication related to item 4.3 this evening. No further council discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Long. Appreciate it. And we move on, council. Item 5, our organizational business. And item 5.1 is a community health and wellness center update. Our Park and Recreation Director, Ann Catry, is here to lead us off. But as I said earlier, I think there's a cast of thousands behind her as well. So we'll be hearing from a lot of people. But Ms. Catry, good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of the council. We're really excited to be here this evening to give you an update on the Community Health and Wellness Center project. I do have a number of people behind me, but we'll introduce them as it's time. Just want to give you a quick update as to what we've been working on for the last several months. From September until now, we've been working really hard to align the community center facility size and amenities with the site and the construction budget. You'll see an update on the facility diagram tonight, and I just wanted to highlight a few key points because I know that we discussed the facility design extensively during the feasibility study. The facility amenities have not changed from the feasibility studies, with the exception of the removal of one gym. That shouldn't be a surprise. We discussed that extensively during the pro forma. The outdoor splash pad, the outdoor playground, and the indoor track is a little bit smaller. But with all of that and some significant efficiencies, we have cut 30,000 square feet from the overall facility design. We were at 136,000 square feet, and we're now down to 106. So typically, our next step would be reporting to you at 100% of schematic design completion. And we're reporting to you a little bit earlier this evening. First of all, because we told the community that we were going to report back in January and February, and we've done just that. But secondly, we want to get in alignment on our sustainability goal for the project with the City Council. Initially, we hope to achieve B3, which stands for Buildings, Benchmark, and Beyond. It's a state of Minnesota certification goal with goals for site, water, energy, indoor environment, materials, and waste. Quite honestly, after spending several months aligning our budget with the design and the site, it's been determined that we cannot meet a B3 standard, and we'd like to switch to a LEED certification. We're seeking your approval for that this evening. Our consultant team will walk through this with you this evening, and we have city staff available for questions, and Emma Strauss is available online as well. We're extremely grateful for the partnership of Emma and the sustainability on this project and in this decision. Both Park and the Sustainability Commission supported this change at a joint meeting on February 12th. Staff and the entire consulting team feel that it's a little too early to select a specific LEED certification at this point. We're just going to be achieving 100% SD by the end of this month, and then we're going to do another pricing exercise, and we'll know more by the time we report back to you again in early April. So with that, I would like to turn the presentation over to Aaron and Leah from HGA, and we have Maggie online as well. Aaron?
Good evening. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Mayor, Council, thank you so much for having us. I'm Aaron Mullins. I'm a design principal at HGA and an architect.
Hi, I'm Leah Werko. I'm a sustainability specialist with HGA.
And then we have Maggie Pippick online as well, who's also a lead specialist with HGA. Did I get the right one?
There you go. That one.
That would point over there.
Should not be tricky. Try the side buttons.
I'm usually good with this stuff. Oh, something happened there.
It's thinking.
Okay.
There we go.
We'll start here. Okay. Well, thank you so much for having us. I'm going to walk through the first 4 items on the agenda tonight, walk through where we're at in the design process and kind of what we've been doing since September, which is when we completed the programming in pre-design phase. We'll walk through the landscape plan, the floor plans, and then we have some renderings to kind of give you an idea of where the project is heading and kind of what the experience of the project will be. All right, it worked that time somewhere. Okay, so from a process standpoint, as Ann said, we're just completing schematic design, and I think a lot of you have seen this diagram before. So in schematic design, we're taking information from the planning and programming phase. We're starting to look closer at the program adjacencies, how the building starts to mass up, what it starts to look like on the site, and working really hard to make sure all of the parts and pieces fit. Along with that, we're working really hard with Dunn, the CM at risk on the project, as well as Tegra, who's the owner's representative, and the city of Bloomington. So more specifically, since September in schematic design, we've been working on kind of 3 things really hard. Engagement, we've had a lot of focus groups. We've had 5 sessions with different groups in the community, led by HGA and COED together. From a design process standpoint, we've been refining the program adjacencies, incorporating the guiding principles that we established with the team early on in the design process. And I think one of the things that's really good to note is that we've also been looking really closely at long-term operational efficiency, making sure that the project considers maintenance when we're designing it, sustainability and the sustainability story of the project, as well as the user experience and programming, how the building is going to function and support the needs of the community. From a cost estimation standpoint, we've been working really closely, like I said, with Dunn, Tegra, and the Community Health and Wellness Center team to align the cost estimates that we've got so far with the design concepts and budget. And that's kind of an ongoing process. We've talked a lot about the sausage making process tonight, so we're in the middle of that. Just to jump into the design here, site plan design, one of the things, if you recall, that we worked really hard on in pre-design and now in schematic design are fitting the elements onto the site that we have, namely parking, stormwater management, and the footprint of the building. Looking at this site plan here, we're looking at different ways to navigate the requirements, the planning requirements of the parking. Some other things to note on here is we have 14,000 square feet of watershed district requirements that we are trying to do at grade so we can make some meaningful design moves with those and also not get greater costs by burying that and treating it in different ways. And then the landscape itself, we're looking really closely at using native plantings throughout the whole site to really highlight kind of just the location that we're at, and doing that in a natural way that doesn't require irrigation, chemicals, things like that. So that's part of the sustainability plan as well. This kind of closer in site plan looks at a couple of things, namely the experience around the site. And so we're looking at adhering to the planning requirements for trees and tree islands in parking lots, and also stormwater management within the parking lots. The entry plaza of the facility, and using native plantings really to create a landscape there that the public moves through and can enjoy. Looking at the stormwater and infiltration basins again as kind of a test project, pilot project on the site to showcase that. And then the fitness trail loop, so you'll see the dark gray that we have going around the site, links up the sidewalks on Penn, 98th, and Newton with the entry of the project. So as we continue into the floor plan, as Ann said, we've cut a lot of square footage out of the project. We've also simplified the form and worked really closely with J.E. Dunn to look for a form and plan organization that is efficient, but also has a lot of opportunity to make a really great project. So on the upper bar, so the plan north here, we have our aquatics, gymnasium on the east. So the east side, that's the corner of 98th and Newton. On the southern side of the plan, we have public health and WIC on the west. And then the darker red that's around the main entrance, those are all programming spaces. So those are spaces that would hold classes for the community and other such things. And then we have indoor play and party rooms off to the east, sorry. Moving up to the second floor is devoted to fitness. And so a lot of the second floor is fitness studios, as well as a combination of cardio and an indoor track. And so you'll get views from the cardio area into an auditorium and into the gymnasium. So we're really trying to promote visibility in the project. So as we move forward into the kind of what we're calling the experience at the project, we went back to looking at the guiding principles of the project and look at how do we take these guiding principles that we developed as a team and start to make architecture with them. And so we're really looking for a building that's welcoming, barrier-free, that represents the community, that supports and embraces health and wellness, and that really is about Bloomington. So is a really local project. And so the palette that we're looking at, again, with a nod towards efficiency and simplicity, but also refined palette, kind of an elemental palette. We're looking at a project that uses textured precast, wood, glass, and really light texture and landscape. So pretty simple moves, but something that's kind of a timeless and elegant solution. So you've seen some of these renderings in some of the other presentations tonight, I saw, but this is a view of the main entrance. And so we have a canopy space at the main entrance that kind of acts as a pavilion and provides outdoor seating opportunities. You noticed maybe, but I forgot to mention it in the plans, that there is a cafe space that is shelled out currently. And so this outdoor forecourt would support that cafe and other public opportunities. As we move into the building, past that forecourt, this is the lobby and check-in desk space. From here off to the left is the cafe, Parks and Rec offices, and check-in in the center. And then you get a view through moving into the fitness and the gymnasium, kind of a view straight through from the lobby into the gym. So we continue moving forward. This is now from in the gymnasium, looking back out through that glass wall into the lobby space and all the way out to that front forecourt. So it's a really visible and open, transparent building. And that's all on the design update. So I'm going to turn it over to Leah.
Thanks. Hi, again, I'm Leah. So we've been designing with sustainability in mind the entire timeline, as Aaron has mentioned. So we have been using B3 as that North Star. B3 is local to Minnesota, so it makes a lot of sense. It's rigorous. However, when those costs came back and we saw that it was over budget, we wanted to explore other options that aligned, that gave that same level of rigor and third-party review that also externally showed all of the good work that's been done around PV and geothermal, native plantings. So in this big world of certifications, there's a lot of options. With code, it's kind of like the worst you could possibly build, all the way up to higher standards. And so we saw that LEED really rose to the top as a comparable option to B3. And so one of the reasons for that is because B3 was holistic. So again, we wanted to make sure that anything that would be pivoted to would also capture design around performance and site, energy, indoor environmental quality, as well as materials and waste. And as you'll see in a couple slides, LEED has a really comparable standard as well. So why else is LEED a good option? So again, it's holistic. It offers that third-party review, so it's not just us saying that it's sustainable. It's actually verified by a third party. It's internationally known, so I love B3, but it tends to be more regionally focused. So regionally known, LEED is known around the country and well beyond it. There's also a mixture of prerequisites as well as optional credits. B3 is, if it's a guideline, it's required. There's not a lot of flexibility around getting out of it, versus LEED has some baseline requirements, but a suite of choices that allows you to choose the sustainability credits that best align with the project goals. And because of that credit flexibility, it does allow for cost considerations. So when we think about the extremely high costs associated with stormwater management for B3, that is where we would have more flexibility with how we choose to meet that, while still meeting the LEED goals and still aligning with the watershed's district's requirements. Also, if you're wanting a plaque, LEED provides that. You have to purchase it, but you do get that. B3, you can brag about it all you want, create your own marketing materials. They don't really have an official plaque, maybe one day, but not right now. And then post-occupancy tracking, it's a different path, but that is an option. But I know that Emma had talked about some internal tracking that's already happening that could be used instead of that. So that's kind of why LEED. And then what we did was we mapped out all of the design that has been done, our cost estimates, so sort of like at first blush, where do we land? And so it's a lot on this slide, but in the chart, you'll see the total points in the category. We went through all the categories. You can see a lot of these align with the B3 categories, so around site and energy and water, indoor environmental quality. And then we said, okay, what would we get with the design right now for LEED? And so in that circle chart, you'll see that right now we're hitting about 53 points. That puts us very safely in the silver category. So certified is the lowest, platinum is the highest, silver's next to certified, so definitely silver. And then after SD, once we can dive a little bit more into it, if LEED is approved to proceed, we could explore those maybe options where we would just want to confirm, is it in or is it out? Play around with those suite of choices and potentially get into gold. So that's where we are now, but I wanted to leave it open for any questions as well.
That's it, Council, for our presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the update and the information. Council, questions on this? Observations? Councilmember Lohman.
Thank you, Mayor. And I imagine that that the discussion that we're having this evening is around just the sustainability components of this. Just want to confirm that, Mayor.
Yes, I think that's. I think the general layout is we heard about that as well, but I think the sustainability ratings are what we'd like to focus on.
Okay, and so with that being said, we've got really these three different choices, and certainly I support what Parks and Arts and the sustainability is put forward. But really, what my question lies is, if we were to, certainly we got the B3, the LEED, and then just do it, but then, I know there's been a long tradition of doing that here in the city, but then not get the credit from that. And I know it's difficult to answer the question, but what is the impact of doing the sustainability, but without the certifications. I know we're in tight budget times, and so I'm just curious. If you don't have to answer tonight if you don't feel comfortable doing that, because I can understand get something out in the public and it'll look good.
We're going to have Leah give that a shot.
Yeah, I have had experience with a lot of projects that design to meet B3 or LEED. What you fall short of is that third-party review. You can't really say whether your building is LEED or B3, so it strips you of the ability to market it as a LEED building or a B3 building. You could say it's a sustainable building and still tell that wonderful story, but it doesn't have that stamp of approval. And because of that, it's okay. And because of that, you can't necessarily guarantee that you are going to get those energy efficiency goals met. That can impact operations and how facilities might manage the building as well. So if you're looking to save costs in the long run too, doing those early analyses around embodied carbon, materials selection, energy, and using the tools and then verifying that is a way to set yourself up for long-term savings as well. So I would say that, yeah, it's hard to know for sure if you're not measuring it. So that's one of the best ways you can do that is by getting a certification.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that's a nice short, which could be a very long answer to that. And I appreciate that. And I think that the public wants to know that when we're in a budget crunch, they have questions around that. And I think that's a great short way to answer it. So there's just two really other quick questions I have here. I know we're kind of going through these things here. You mentioned something about the gym, about reducing that. There's still an opportunity at some other point when the project's done that we'd still be able to add a gym if we had to, right?
Mayor, Councilmember Lohman, members of the council, yes, we do have the facility designed so that we would be able to add a third gym and we would be able to expand aquatics. As we did our conversations and our studies looking at these types of facilities, not only locally but nationwide, fitness, gyms, and aquatics are typically the things that community centers are looking to design. And HJ has done just a fabulous job of siting the building on the property with the ability to be able to expand in those directions.
And the reason why I asked that question, because we're talking about sustainability here, would that impact any of the sustainability pieces if we were to do that? Would that bring our rating down, or would that be done with that in mind?
I can try that one. Any addition that we would add to the building in the future would follow I don't know about the rating system and how in addition to it would plug into that, but I think that it would tend to follow the same rigorous requirements that the base building followed. Relative to the mechanical system, we would need to talk with the engineers to see how we would plug into that to
and this is so speculative.
Right.
I don't want to put you in that position, but thank you. That gives me a good idea. Finally, Mayor, last question is, certainly we've brought this project down from 136,000 square feet down to the 106. And I know one of the questions that I think of as a taxpayer is, by doing that, have we kind of, in a sense, we're still trying to achieve the sustainability goals that we've laid out as a community in terms of what what we believe in as our core values. But then also on the other end, there's this fear of what's this going to cost me as a taxpayer? Is this going to still kind of fit within the plan that we have? I know there's going to be, we always knew there may be some things that may overlap and fall over that, but what does that look like in terms of where we're at now? And I know that can change with a number of things, so I want to be careful about asking that question.
Absolutely, Mayor, Councilmember Lohman, members of the council. That's a really great question, and that's why I mentioned at the beginning the items that have been cut in the facility. And I really want to make a fine point that we have not cut any of the main components in any way that would affect the operations of the facility, the pro forma of the facility, or the amenities that the community said that they wanted throughout the last 10 years. So it was really a solid exercise in efficiency, but all of the amenities that impacted the pro forma that you all reviewed last fall are still there.
Thank you. And you've got my other questions, so I'll get those later.
Councilmember Rivas and Councilmember D'Alessandro. Councilmember Rivas.
Two quick questions. in spite of all the changes that you have been going through, are we still on schedule to finalize the project like it has been planned originally?
Mayor, Councilmember Rivas, members of the council, yes, we are still on schedule.
Awesome. Second question is quick also. I just have a question in regards to the square footage. The building or the shell, the outside shell still remains the same size, right? Since you're going to be able to expand aquatics and athletics if you needed to in the future, that means the building size hasn't changed. Just whatever amenities you have cut back in the amenities within inside the building, but not the outside, right? Am I getting that correct, or the building has actually reduced in size from 136,000 square feet to 106?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The building has reduced in size. And we did that by some of the things that Ann had mentioned. Like at one point we were exploring 3 gymnasiums, which is one of the things that increased the square footage. And now we have 2 gymnasiums, and I think our track is a bit smaller. And then just holistically making the project more efficient. So looking really closely at corridor sizes, at restroom sizes, at all of those amenities, and just kind of tightening everything up. Yep.
So you will be able to expand it in the future if you needed to. Huh?
Correct. Yeah, so as Ann mentioned, on the site we have some areas set aside where the building could grow into should we need to add a gymnasium or expand aquatics.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Councilmember D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad you left this particular slide up because these are where my questions were focused. So thank you for that. So can you mentioned the assumptions below, indicating 10 points assumed for optimized energy performance and 2 points for renewable energy. I don't see where the asterisk is in the credit category. Can you just tell me what credit category those numbers fit into?
Yeah, so when we talk about where, like a suite of options, and especially with, B3, you have to do it. This is where we can play around and say, okay, well, maybe it makes more sense to get more credits from energy or from materials. So that was specifically related to the energy performance, so energy and atmosphere. So you can see that there's 33 possible points, and right now we have 15 assumed. There's a possibility that we'll have a lot more that would fall within the maybe section right now. So that's what that asterisk was that, there's further exploration that needs to happen to see if we can even move points around.
Understood. Okay, so that 15 points doesn't include those 12 right now, but it could include those 12 in the future if we get it right.
Yeah, and
okay.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
And we have just today, I was talking to our energy modeler, and they're starting to
Understood.
More details around it. So.
That's helpful. Thank you. So 2 things related to that. First question I have is, you all mentioned that, and I don't know if this is what's impacting kind of the water efficiency piece, but you mentioned in the challenges of B3 certification, the stormwater problem. Mm-hmm. Was there any review done of gray water management so that we wouldn't have as much stormwater runoff, for example, in the first place, to manage it in a different way than worrying about the collectors and things of that nature? I'm asking just simply because, there's opportunities for filtration and reuse in all of the restrooms and other places like that when you have gray water options. Just curious if that was a consideration that you all made as you thought about how to potentially solve those 2 problems.
That's a good question. So I know with the B3 stormwater requirements, it has a lot more to do with the site itself and infiltration when a storm happens. How are you managing that? And that's what makes it so costly. I have Maggie Pipek, our lead specialist, is online. She's the one who actually put this scorecard together. So Maggie, I don't know if you can hear us, but if you have thoughts on the water, gray water reuse and how LEED would capture that, I don't believe that's what's captured here.
Okay.
My experience on other projects has been that gray water can be, from an operational perspective, somewhat burdensome. It doesn't mean that we can't explore it, though. I don't know, Aaron, if you've talked with anyone in plumbing about it, but it is something that we could still, even at this point, consider.
Yeah, we have not explored it to this point, but I think that one of the benefits of LEED, as Leah said, is its flexibility and their ability to look at a number of different things. And as we move this forward post-schematic design, I think that's our charge, is to look for opportunities, and that could be something, look for opportunities to look at systems such as that.
Mm-hmm. And then I think, Maggie, are you on or off mute?
I am, and I think you guys answered it well. I would say that we're still in an exploration stage, and it would be something that we can consider.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I appreciate the insights there. Lastly, what is the how do I say this? I'm not a huge. I'm curious about why our location and transportation number is so slow or so low, and I don't know if it has to do with the fact that the bus stop is clear on the other side of the entrance to the building and things of that nature. I mean, what have we been thinking about in terms of making better choices there? Not that we have to necessarily, but it would impact our ability to get better lead certification potentially, but also just make for a better experience, even if we had some other way for people who are coming in and off of transportation off of 98th Street to get into the building, or even under shelter fairly quickly. That would be better for all the people we expect to take public to this thing as we're trying to work on our public transportation work with the folks at Met Council and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll let Maggie pipe in as well. But so for location and transportation, that actually has a lot to do with where your site already is located, more than what you're putting on the site. And so you're kind of given the points that you can. That is about what we can get for this based on where it's located and walkability and items of that nature. But Maggie, is there anything else you'll add?
I would just add you are right on track with regards to the alternative transportation, like bus routes being part of that component, and it is a credit. Unfortunately, like the way the credit is written, it's pretty prescriptive, and it's targeted to trying to hit a certain number of rides or trips. And so it's more about like the volume and access to the site and how that site is connected back to other resources in that category. So, I mean, we can look and talk about things that, where the kind of like misses are, but I also know that we probably don't want to go into a very detailed discussion at this time.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to understand. I appreciate the insights there. My comment for staff might be, Mr. Mayor, that we consider if there's something that we can do, either with Met Council, or somehow to help mitigate that by, I don't know if it's moving the bus stop closer to a corner where it could be more easily accessed to the back of the building or something else, but maybe we have to take that on ourselves to make better use of that. Thanks. As it says, in case you're curious, I think any certification is better than no certification, so lead of any size looks good to me. Yeah, thanks.
Mayor, Councilmember D'Alessandro, members of the council, if I could just add one thing too. I wanted to pull this slide up. And I wanted to talk a little bit about safety and security in the building and our access points. I want you to know we are working very closely with Emma. We're working very closely with Julie and Kirk in engineering as well to try to make the building as accessible as we possibly can, and certainly are considering our bus and our bike and all of our different forms of access to the facility. Just wanted to point out one thing that we haven't talked about a lot, but if you see the green areas where there's the Park and Rec office, and then there's the check-in desk, and then there are the crosses, that's the point, what we are referring to as the paywall. So we've been focusing on just having one main public access to the facility so that we can control it from a safety and security standpoint. And then also knowing that we can't have an entrance on the other side of the building because then people would be entering on the wrong side of the paywall. So it has been a very deliberate conversation, but we are working to achieve the best access for all users of the facility as possible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And when I saw the slide, it made sense. But I'm glad you laid that out as you did. I mean, from my perspective, back to the whole certification, I would agree with Councilmember D'Alessandro. Anything is better than nothing. And I prefer lead certification because I think people understand it more. I think B3 is a bit wonky and industry specific, but people understand lead certification. My question is this LEED certification specific to community centers, health and wellness centers, or is this more of a general certification that we're talking about here?
Yeah, so there are a few different options with LEED, and this falls under BD&C, so building design and construction, so it's new construction. So it's, and under new construction is a lot of different types, including community spaces, so it's not specific to this building type.
So, but, okay, so it's new construction, but it isn't specific. This could be a bus stop also, or this could be a, you know,
I think they have to be,
house.
I think they have to be occupied, but yeah.
And the reason I ask, I mean, because I would think the work that we put into this, if it was specific to, I think the apples to apples comparison is much better than an apples to Chevrolet's comparison. So if it can be compared to other community centers in terms of the certification, in terms of the efficiency and the sustainability aspect, it makes a lot more sense to me. If it's compared to, you know, a clean room over in one of our, chips manufacturing companies, it's an entirely different animal. So it would make more sense to compare it or to judge it based on what it's like compared to other community centers.
I could jump in really quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Maggie.
You don't mind.
Please.
With regards to the track of certification, what Leah stated is right. Like, they don't subdivide it out into that small of distinctions. There is a separate schools category because under the new construction, because that is a very, K-12 schools are a pretty unique category. However, I would say, like, when you're talking about certain things like energy, like that baseline that you're going to be having compared to is comparing it to buildings that are similar in scope. So you're not going to be comparing a community center to a lab space or something like that. So I would say, like, on a particular strategy or category level, there is the ability to compare, for it to be looked at against its, peer buildings.
Okay, I appreciate that. And frankly, and I've mentioned this to Ann, the reason I bring it up, working on TCF Bank Stadium, there was no LEED certification for a stadium. So the University of Minnesota worked with LEED to create one, and to create one very specific about what we're trying to accomplish and what a stadium could and should be. And I mean, if they wanted to do something as a test pilot program, I think this would be a great opportunity for LEED to take this and run with it a little bit. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. This may come as a shock, but I may not agree with everything. I don't see the value of LEED certification. I think making this perform as best as possible and being sustainable makes sense. Spending the extra money, in my mind, does not. I don't say that to be flippant. I don't say that out of disrespect. I actually have helped create and launch and write part of a local or statewide and a national green building program for the residential industry. So I understand these programs. My concern about them is they're oftentimes way too prescriptive and not focused on performance. And the only thing in my mind that matters at the end of the day is how the building performs. So the fact that you do a bunch of things that you get points for, that cost a bunch of money, that don't really make it more sustainable, is irrelevant in my mind. And I think that taking the approach of making this building perform from an energy standpoint, from an air quality standpoint, from a water standpoint, from all of those different, you had like 5 different things, focus on that, in my opinion, and forget about LEED, forget about B3, other than to the extent that they can be helpful and informative in terms of the design and use your expertise to create the best building we can. So that's probably just one council person's opinion. The other question I have in terms of this is am I correct in understanding that the outdoor amenity is a walking track around the building?
Sure. Councilmember Nelson, Mayor, members of the council. I would say that mostly, yes, it's an outdoor walking area. But then I would also highlight in the northeast corner, there is one area that is going to be green space that we haven't yet determined exactly how that's going to function, but it could be an outdoor classroom type space, outdoor fitness space, an outdoor activity space, potentially.
Okay. Thank you for that, because that's one of my big concerns. The task force that originally looked at this, 700 years ago, 3 of their 5 recommendations specifically noted having outdoor amenities and having a site that had outdoor amenities. And so that is very important to me to honor what they were looking to do there. And I also think it's very important for the project. I know we also have some concerns that we've discussed. We don't need to get into them tonight with regards to parking, possible lots across the street to expand that parking and things of that nature. So in regards to that, have we looked at other options, including in particular the office space and finding a different location for office space, not essential features of this, but just the office portions of it for some of the admin as well as parks, so that we could have more outdoor amenities. We could maybe avoid a parking ramp. We might get that 3rd gym in there, those types of things. I would rather focus on the amenities than the administration in this project. And so that's just my feedback on the design as it is today. So probably, again, just one council member's opinion.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anything else, Council? Any other thoughts? Councilmember Carter.
I just have a clarifying question. So for the LEED certification fee of $12,000, is that a one-time fee or an annual fee?
I believe it's one time. Is that right, Maggie?
It is one time. It's the registration, but that is the registration fee, and there are review fees in addition to that.
And are those annual reviews? Are they every 5 years, every 10 years?
It is a one-time review fee, unless you were to decide to opt into an operations and maintenance rating system on top of that, and then that would be an ongoing fee to do that. But it's part of a tracking and measurement and verification.
Okay.
Portfolio.
So once you have LEED, you have LEED.
Okay.
Yep. Once you have LEED, you have LEED.
Once we have the seal on the building, we're not going
Yeah.
back.
No one's
Okay.
taking it down. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And so that's $12,000 plus a registration fee, or that is the registration fee, and then there's another fee.
The 12,000, Maggie, that's the registration fee, and then there's the review fee.
Well, the registration fee, I'm sorry, I should say, is like $1,375, like $1,375.
Okay.
Then there are review fees that are a price per square foot number.
Right. Okay. In the packet, it says for this size of building, it'd be like $12,000.
So that's probably an estimate of all of it.
Okay.
All of it, the fees together at this point in time.
Okay. So the costs really are then in actually making the building sustainable. It's not in the fees to become LEED certified.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Councilmember Mula.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll have my piece at it. And I'll keep it short because everyone said mostly everything. So I really just want to second the piece from Councilmember D'Alessandro about the public transportation and ease of drop-off and pickup. That was one of the first things I brought up when we had these conversations last summer, particularly where we have our current bus stops right now. So the more we can improve that to just make it easier, not only for seniors to get in and out of the building, but with the intent of young families being able to now use this space as well. That's particularly important to me on that. And then also the piece from Councilmember Nelson about I really care more about the function, efficiency, and effectiveness of this. And if LEED just happens to fit, then that's great. But if we're doing extra things just to do them and they don't really add any value to the building, I'd prefer not to. And I think that approach for me in life just works. If I'm just doing things because I know it's the right thing to do, and then someone can happen to say, hey, good job, and give me a plaque, that's great. But that's not my intent to go after. Thanks.
Last call, council. All right, well, thank you so much. Thank you for the update. Council, the one thing we do need to do on this, I'm looking for a motion to approve the move from B3 certification requirements to LEED certification for the Community Health and Wellness Center project.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Carter, second by Councilmember D'Alessandro to approve the move from B3 certification to LEED certifications for the Health and Wellness Center. No further council discussion on that. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion carries at 6-1 with Councilmember Nelson in opposition. Council, we are now to our final item of the evening, item 5.2, our City Council policy and issue update. I will kick off with a review of our council listening session earlier this evening. We heard from a variety of folks. We heard from John Whitemaker. John was at our Truth and Taxation hearing back in December and asked a number of questions and wanted to come back and ask them again and get some specific answers. So had a conversation about things like the disposition of the Thunderbird Hotel site, or whether or not we were going to continue our Earn Second Safe League program at the city level or our smoking cessation work at the city level. And so had a good conversation, got some good opinions back from John, and a good conversation, and it was a good opportunity to answer some of those questions that he did bring up back in December at the Truth and Taxation hearing. Sheila Berry appeared again before our listening session. Ms. Berry has had an ongoing dispute with the Bloomington Police Department around tactics, around different things that she believes is things that are being directed specifically at her and the city's follow-up and inability to address some of those concerns. We'll continue the conversation, I'm sure, with Ms. Berry, but I don't know that we're going to get to a comfortable resolution because there is an ongoing investigation that encompasses her orbit, and I'm afraid that it's just the reality of the situation right now. And unless and until that becomes resolved, I think that there's going to be some questions and some uncomfortableness for Ms. Berry about the different work that goes on through the city of Bloomington. Pam Palmer was with us this evening. She started talking in support of the animal shelter, in support of an animal shelter improvement program within the city of Bloomington, and then also had some comments about the Health and Wellness Center that we were just discussing. And we figured we finished with Rob Whitsack, who brought up some specific parking issues and an apartment complex within his neighborhood, specifically that the parking from the apartment complex was spilling into the neighborhood, on-street parking, many times undocumented vehicles that wouldn't belong at the apartment complex and certainly didn't belong in the neighborhood. Directed Mr. Whitsack and our city engineer, Julie Long, to look at some alternatives in terms of the parking restrictions in and around the neighborhood to try and see if we can't resolve this, because agree that's an uncomfortable situation for a neighborhood when the apartment complex comes spilling out into the neighborhood. That was our listening session, and unless I missed anything, Council, I don't think I did, but that was our listening session this evening. I have nothing else to add, so I'll turn to Ms. Tolman, our interim city manager, to see what we've got going on in the city manager's office.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two updates. One, just want to give a shout out to our Utilities Division, our Public Works team. To date, counting this morning, we've had 17 water main breaks so far in 2025, in January and February alone. Just to give you an idea of the impact of that, our highest number of breaks was in 2022 of 35, and we're already at 17. And our average breaks per year is 22. And so this year started out fast, and it's hard to say where we might end up, as there are a number of factors that contribute to a water main breaking. But our staff has been just working around the clock to fix it. I think obviously it has a lot to do with the weather, the cold and the hot weather back and forth. But just want to give a shout out to our team for doing that. Just to give you some data, 256 services were impacted by these water breaks, most of them residential over commercial. And the average time that water was out during this time was 4 hours from start to end. So kudos to our Public Works team for attending to that. Then the other update I have is just wanted to share for the community. We do have FAQs up on our website on immigration. I know there's lots of questions around our community on what police do and if they work with federal agencies on enforcing immigration. There's a video by our police chief, Hodges, that talks about that. It's also interpreted in Spanish. And there's a list of FAQs about the role we play in immigration enforcement. Also, part of that website is a link to community resources, more wraparound services, so people have questions around legal advice, not advice, but referrals to where they can go for legal advice, housing, public health, community resources, anything to support our community. That can also be found online, and we'll update that page as we get more developments as we go as well. That's all I have for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you much. Questions for Ms. Tolman on any of this? Very good. Council, anything to add this evening in our policy and issue update? Councilmember Lohman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just three really quick things here. Just wanted to let folks know that the school board and the school is going to be having a State of the Schools on April 15th. Our superintendent had mentioned that during our Rotary meeting today, and I wanted to just be sure that people are reminded of that. And I know it's been a little bit of time since we have had the chance to kind of meet with the school board, and I don't know if they'll have that opportunity to do that sometime this year, but I just, as one council member, would love to see us do that again. I know there's a number of things that are happening at the federal level and just in our state that might make some sense to do that, to touch base with those folks. And then finally, Mayor, I just wanted to thank you. There really is a focus around this year around the budget, and in your Bloomington briefing, you had discussed that, talked about that. Haven't had a chance yet to have a look at your the minutes, the council minute around that. But I do recommend that residents have a look at that, and also your council minute as we kind of look to try to pave our way forward in the future here. Again, I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate it. Others? Councilmember Nelson, let me guess, a couple of quick things.
Just one, and it'll probably be very quick. I would like to make a suggestion that we consider a moratorium on expanding RS1 zoning based on the action that we took earlier and the suggestion by some that we don't necessarily want to see that expand, that we want to make these rules for the existing places. Well, we can get our arms around that because I'm worried that we may have opened up a situation where we're going to get a number of things and take up a tremendous amount of staff time to review these. And I don't necessarily think that was the consensus of the direction that we wanted to go, was to expand that further throughout the city. And so that would just be my suggestion if there is interest in that.
I appreciate the suggestion, Councilmember. I think a moratorium, we'd have to set a time limit on it, and then did give notice and everything, but then I would hope we would have some sort of outcome at the end of that.
Sorry, Mayor, if I might.
Please.
I think it would be to largely address Councilmember D'Alessandro's concerns that if we were in a place where we had the ordinances that people felt comfortable with, that we didn't need that zoning district, that would be the outcome that I would look for. Or we would have parameters a little bit more tight on how and when we would consider expanding that, because I'm still concerned that it's simply going to be used to just lock in large lots without reference to actually sustainability or protection of the environment.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
So one of those two directions.
Nodding heads or thumbs up, thumbs down on this thought? Because the bottom line is I will ask staff if we can even do that, or because I know there are specific things you've got to put, parameters you've got to set around a moratorium, and if we're able to do that or not. But other thoughts on that, Councilmember D'Alessandro?
So I think I probably have just the opposite opinion of it at the moment. And, Councilmember Nelson and I have gone back and forth on this literally since we started talking about this. I actually want people to bring it up because I want us to prioritize getting these environmental things done. And so I actually want people to come in and petition for them. I do. And not because not willy-nilly, not because it's to preserve lot size, not because of anything, but because there is a substantial and valid reason. If you've got those 2 requirements out of 4 in there, including steep slope, I know we say our city forester does the work, but our city forester has been overwhelmed over the last 2 years. I can't imagine that that's actually been, no offense to the city forester, but I can't imagine that's been the kind of review that I would want to see us doing from a native natural landscaping and forest preservation perspective. So I'm not opposed to the long-term play that I think we're aligned in the long-term view. We're not aligned on how we get there in the short term. The only other thing I'll say is if we're going to do a moratorium, we do a moratorium on all of it till we get that stuff done. Because if the environmental stuff is going to apply to everywhere, then we should wait to do anything until we get it for everywhere. So that's my counter argument to that. And I can't imagine we were going to put a moratorium on zoning changes in the city. So I'm hesitant to be okay with it.
And I appreciate that. And the other thing to consider, I mean, we have approved the Planning Commission's work plan, and our planning staff we've already seen is already plenty busy for the coming year, and this would make would add significantly to whatever they were doing. So, again, Councilmember Lohman?
Just briefly, I already have an email asking about that in my district, about looking into that zone. So just for context.
I also have one person asking the same thing in my district.
If I'm looking at thumbs up, what I will do, I'll put a thumbs up as well, so we can have staff kind of take a look at it and we can have this conversation rather than having it at 9 o'clock on a Monday night. Put it in front of all of us, and we can have the discussion back and forth whether or not it's a good idea, whether or not it's the opposite idea is a better idea. But I think that's a legitimate thought. So we're good with that? All right, very good. Council, anything else to bring forward this evening? All right, if not, we are done with our agenda, Council, at 8:50 this evening. I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Mua, second by Councilmember Rivas to adjourn this evening. No further council discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thanks much, Council, for the work this evening. Thank you to staff for your work as well, the good meeting. And thanks to the members of the public who participated. Always appreciate you showing up and sticking with us. Thanks much, everybody. Have a good Tuesday.